This is the only recording that still exists of what happened inside the approach control room outside Harlan Ridge on the night of February 19th, 2019. The controller who was on position that night has never spoken about it publicly. What you are about to hear was reconstructed from the facility's continuous voice tape, pulled before that radar position was quietly decommissioned 8 months later. Most nights, nothing happens. A man sits alone in a dark room and watches small dots move across a glass screen. The dots are airplanes. The airplanes land. Everyone goes home. But for 6 minutes, on that night, there was a return on Gregory Hale's scope that did not belong to any aircraft in the world, and it was answering him. Gregory Hale was 44 years old, and he had been working radar for 19 of them. He was what the agency calls a journeyman controller, not management, not a trainee. The kind of man they put on the midnight shift, because the midnight shift almost never needs anyone good. Harlan Ridge approach handled a quiet wedge of airspace over farm country. A few regional turboprops in the evening, the occasional medical flight, a cargo run that came through around 2 a.m, and rarely said more than a word. By 1 a.m, the airspace was usually empty. Hale would dim the room down until the only light was the soft green wash of the scope, refill his coffee, and wait out the dark. The people who worked with him described him the same way investigators later would. Careful, unexcitable, almost boring on the radio. In 19 years, he had never filed a near miss, never lost separation, never once raised his voice on a frequency. He kept a paper logbook out of habit, long after the agency went digital, writing down every contact in small, square handwriting. His wife said he liked the night shift, because nothing ever happened on it. He could think. He could sit with the hum of the equipment and the empty sky and feel, for 8 hours, like the only person awake in the county. On the night of February 19th, the weather was clear and cold. The last scheduled flight, a regional flight up from the south, had landed at 11:40. The cargo run had cancelled for weather further down the line. By 3 a.m, Hale's sector was completely empty. No flight plans active, no aircraft on frequency, nothing inbound for 200 miles. He logged the airspace as quiet at 3:01. 16 minutes later, a target appeared at the western edge of his scope. It was not supposed to be there. There was no flight plan for it. No airline had filed it. And it was already inside his airspace before the radar ever painted it. The first thing Hale did was the thing any controller does. He assumed it was a mistake. A primary return with no transponder code. A primary, in the language of the job, usually means a small aircraft that forgot to turn its equipment on, or a flock of birds, or a glitch in the radar sweep itself. He watched it for one full rotation of the antenna to see if it would disappear. It did not disappear. On the next sweep it was closer, and now it had a code. The transponder was squawking, broadcasting 4 digits back to his screen. The digits were 7700. Every controller in the world knows that number cold. 770 is the emergency code. It means an aircraft in distress. Hale keyed his microphone and made the standard call. He gave the position, asked the aircraft to identify itself, asked the nature of the emergency. On the tape, his voice is flat and professional. For a moment, there was only the hiss of an open frequency. And then a man's voice answered him. The voice was calm. It read back Hale's facility name correctly. It gave a call sign, an airline, and a flight number, and asked for vectors to the nearest runway. It was a completely normal radio call, the kind Hale had answered 10,000 times. The problem was the call sign. Hale typed it into the system to pull the flight's information, the way he had 100 times that week. The system returned nothing. The flight number the voice had given him belonged to a route that had not operated in over 20 years, and the last aircraft to ever fly under that number had gone down on approach in bad weather in 1994. Hale's logbook entry at this point becomes harder to read. The square handwriting opens up. The letters get larger. He did what he was trained to do. He kept working the airplane. He gave it headings. He gave it a descent. And the return on his scope followed every instruction perfectly, turning when he told it to turn, descending when he told it to descend, reading back each clearance in that same unhurried voice. He asked the aircraft how many souls were on board. This is a routine question in an emergency. It tells the crews on the ground how many people they are about to receive. The voice answered with a number. Then it added something that was not part of any procedure. It said, the same as last time. The target continued its descent toward the long closed runway at the edge of Hale's airspace, a runway that had been paved over and turned back to grass before some of his co-workers were born. He watched the dot sink lower and lower, reading off altitudes that no longer matched anything real, until it reached the threshold of a runway that did not exist. And then, on the tape, Hale stops talking. For 19 seconds, there is no controller's voice at all, only the open frequency, and underneath it, very faint, the voice saying his name. Not his call sign. Not his facility. His name, Gregory, the way you would say it to wake someone who had fallen asleep. At 3:23, the return reached the ground at the position of the old runway, slowed, and stopped, the way an aircraft does after it has landed and is rolling out. Then it was gone, not faded, not drifted off the edge of the scope, gone between one sweep of the antenna and the next, the way a target vanishes when there was never anything there to begin with. The frequency went silent. Hale sat in the green light of an empty room, with an empty sky in front of him. In his logbook, beneath the last altitude, he wrote 3 words and underlined them twice. Then he finished his shift. He did not call anyone until morning. When Hale reported it, the agency did what the agency does. They pulled the tapes. The continuous voice recorder confirmed the part no one wanted confirmed. There were 2 voices on the frequency for just over 6 minutes. Hale's and another man's. The recording is real. It still exists. That has never been in dispute. What has never been explained is everything else. There was no aircraft. Primary radar, the kind that bounces a signal off solid metal and does not rely on a transponder at all, should have shown a real airplane if one had been there. The agency's own report notes that it did not, and then declines to say what it did show. The flight number, investigators confirmed, was retired in 1994 after a fatal approach accident in weather very much like the weather that night. The number of souls, the voice reported, was the same as the number who died. The runway it landed on had not existed for 25 years. The recording was classified as an unresolved anomaly, and the position was decommissioned the following autumn. Gregory Hale never worked another night shift. He retired early, quietly, and asked that his name be kept out of the report. We know the 3 words he wrote in his logbook, because the logbook was entered into the case file. He wrote, "It came back. Most nights, nothing happens. A man sits in a dark room and watches the dots, and the dots are airplanes, and the airplanes land, and everyone goes home. But some flights were never filed, and some of them are still looking for the runway." This was Nightfile, case 003. Subscribe, and we'll tell you which file comes next.